Welcome back. If you just joined us, we've been looking at the federal government economic recovery plan for the year 2017. And the big question, can Nigeria get out of the economic recession? How can the Nigeria bridge the infrastructural deficit of 30 trillion naira annually? And our guest on this episode of Question Time is the chairman, National Economic Summit Group, Buka Haba Kyari. Stay with us. You seem to be adopting the Made in Nigeria initiative of the federal government, which is based on agriculture and manufacturing. But this seems to run contrary against the free market economy.
No, I am more of a free market person when it comes to the general conversation about the economy. And I remain a free market person. But I do believe that there are certain things that would benefit us when we decide to look inwards and be competitive in doing so.
So the restriction on importation due to high tariff and
I don't support that. I would want those I would want the 41 items ban to be lifted. That's something, because it doesn't make sense. Let people buy things, but what we need to do is that the tariffs would be an incentive for domestic producers to produce, meaning that there shouldn't be smuggling of any goods. But if somebody is bringing in a commodity and they have to pay a high tariff, the price of that finished product versus one that is made domestically would actually favor the domestic producer. Then in which case, as a consumer, if the domestic product is of equal or better quality, I would be incented to buy that because it is cheaper. So some of the economies that we are slobbering over and discussing about their achievements did so by closing their economies to such sort of comparative advantage areas or domains. And that's how they became successful. So Korea did not become industrialized overnight. They had purposeful, deliberate economic policy that may not, at the inception or at the initial phases, that may not look like free market. So it's free market with certain incentives given to the domestic producers.
Now you've called for diversification of the economy. Would this make for the infrastructural deficit? You talked about, your survey reads that Nigeria needs a 30 trillion naira funding gap to breach the infrastructural deficit in the country annually. So does this address this funding gap?
So as a nation or as a business, you always need to set audacious goals. And we believe that infrastructural gap can be met when Nigeria as a country, and I'm now talking about our economic policy or the policy posture, is investor friendly to anybody who is seeking for a good return of their investments, be they living in England, in Europe, in China, Japan, or the Middle East, or the US for that matter. Because anyone who looks at Nigeria and say, this is a burgeoning, growing economy with the right demographics, and if I bring in my money to invest, and 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road, I start repatriating my profits, I will not have any issues with an exchange policy, FX policy, or with the general national economic policy. Then it would be easier to convince such investors to come into Nigeria.
Now, to bridge the 30 trillion naira funding gap of infrastructural deficits, what are the options available to the federal government?
The option for the federal government to consider is to actually embrace the private sector. PPP is actually one of such an excellent option. They should put all options on the table, and I don't mean that flippantly. If it requires certain either concessioning of certain assets whereby the private sector bring in their money, and then for a certain period of time, they can run and raise revenue and